For a moment, everyone assumed Grandma wanted to offer the kind of sweet blessing people expect from an elderly woman at an engagement party. A few guests smiled politely. Someone even began lifting a champagne glass, expecting a sentimental toast that would last no more than a minute or two. The tension I felt seemed to belong only to me. The microphone reached her hands. She thanked the host with the same gentle smile she wore while serving tea at home. Behind her, almost as if nothing unusual had happened, the quiet whispers began again. The patriarch leaned toward his wife. His brother muttered something under his breath. A cousin chuckled softly. They slipped back into their familiar language, convinced they still stood behind an invisible wall no one else could cross. Grandma waited patiently. She didn't rush them. When the room finally settled, she looked around at every table before speaking in clear, steady English. "Thank you all for welcoming our family this evening. My granddaughter has found someone she loves very much, and for that alone, I have been grateful." She paused and rested one hand over the silver brooch pinned above her heart. "I've worn this little brooch to every important family celebration for more years than I can count." Her fingers traced its worn edges with unmistakable affection. "My late husband gave it to me when we boarded a ship together as newlyweds. We were young, frightened, and beginning a life neither of us could have imagined." Several guests leaned forward. Even my daughter looked surprised. Grandma almost never spoke about Grandpa beyond ordinary family stories. "We lived overseas for several years," she continued. "Your beautiful country became our home long before many of you were born. I learned your customs because neighbors welcomed me. I learned your traditions because friends patiently corrected my mistakes. And I learned your language because kindness has always been easier to understand when spoken in someone's own words." A puzzled silence spread across the room. Without realizing it, I found myself remembering every small mystery from the past few months. The foreign songs that made her stop folding laundry, the faint smile before she quietly changed the television channel, the moment her teapot paused in midair, the notebook she filled after every family gathering, the calm expression she never lost. Each memory slipped into place like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known I was trying to solve. Grandma looked toward the patriarch with genuine warmth. "I've always admired families who keep their language alive across generations," she said. "It's a beautiful gift to children and grandchildren. Too many people forget where they came from." The compliment seemed to relax several members of the family. The patriarch smiled again, convinced he had misunderstood the direction of her speech. Then Grandma added one more sentence. "I've enjoyed hearing yours throughout these past several months." The smile disappeared. His wife blinked. Across the table, a cousin slowly lowered his fork. No one reached for another sip of wine. No waiter moved. The room seemed to shrink until every heartbeat sounded louder than the music drifting in from the hotel lobby. Grandma's eyes never left the family across from her. There was no anger in her face, only quiet certainty. The certainty of someone who had carried a truth patiently until the proper moment arrived. Around us, people exchanged confused glances, still unsure whether they had heard her correctly. My daughter looked from Grandma to her fiancé, searching for an explanation neither of them could yet give. He had gone completely pale. I realized then that Grandma had never been guessing. She had never been confused. She had never missed a single word. She drew one calm breath, lifted her eyes to the stunned family before her, and, without changing the warmth in her voice, continued her speech in their language. Grandma's voice never trembled. She continued speaking in their language with the same calm rhythm she used when reading bedtime stories to her grandchildren. There was no hesitation, no searching for words, no trace of uncertainty. Every sentence flowed naturally, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had once lived an entire life inside those sounds. The room had become perfectly still. Guests who understood the language stared at her in disbelief. Those who didn't looked from one face to another, realizing something extraordinary was happening. Even the waiters stopped where they stood, unsure whether to continue serving dessert or simply watch. After several moments, Grandma switched back to English. "I think it is only fair," she said gently, "that everyone here understands what has been said over these past few months." No one interrupted her. She looked first at the family patriarch. "The afternoon we toured the reception venue, you admired the gardens before saying my cardigan belonged in those gardens more than I did. You laughed that photographs would look more elegant if I remained behind the second row." His face drained of color. She turned toward his wife. "At the bridal boutique, you told your sister that my granddaughter had married upward and wondered how long our family could pretend to belong among yours. You smiled when you said it, because you believed smiles made cruel words sound refined." The sister slowly lowered her eyes. Grandma continued without raising her voice. "During the engagement planning meeting, someone described me as decorative. Another called me confused. Someone else joked that I probably no longer remembered which conversation I was listening to." She paused just long enough for the silence to settle over every table. I remembered every conversation. Then she lifted the small notebook from her handbag. I wasn't writing recipes. She opened it carefully. April 12th, the restaurant meeting. She quoted the conversation exactly as it had happened, first in their language, then translating it into English. April 19th, wedding dress shopping. Again, she repeated every sentence, every joke, every whispered laugh. May 3rd, engagement planning. Once more, she recited their private remarks with astonishing precision. The notebook wasn't necessary anymore. Everyone understood she had never needed it to remember. She had written those pages because truth deserves accuracy. Around the room, the reaction spread like ripples across still water. My daughter covered her mouth with both hands. One elderly aunt quietly wiped tears from her cheeks. Several business associates exchanged deeply uncomfortable glances. Friends who had admired the patriarch's reputation suddenly found themselves unable to look at him. The restaurant staff pretended to adjust plates while listening to every word. No one spoke. No one defended what had been said. Grandma closed the notebook and rested both hands upon it. I have been asked many times in my life why I stay quiet when people underestimate me. She smiled sadly. The answer is simple. She looked around the room, making certain every person felt included. I wanted to know whether kindness required an audience. The sentence settled over the banquet hall with almost physical weight. If people treat strangers with respect only when they believe they are being understood, that isn't kindness. She turned toward my daughter's fiancé. If people honor family only when it is convenient, that isn't love. Then her eyes returned to his parents. The truest measure of character appears when people believe no one understands them. There was no accusation in her voice, only disappointment. The kind that hurts more because it leaves room for reflection. For several long seconds, no one moved. Then my daughter's fiancé slowly stood. His voice shook. "Grandma." He stopped, swallowed hard, and tried again. "I'm sorry." He looked directly at her. I heard some of those conversations. I told myself they weren't important enough to confront. I convinced myself things would improve on their own. Tears filled his eyes. "I was wrong. I should have protected you. I should have protected your family. Instead, I protected my own comfort. Grandma gave him a gentle nod but did not interrupt. He turned toward my daughter. I'm asking for forgiveness, not because I deserve it, but because I finally understand what silence can cost. Then the patriarch rose. The confident man who had spent months measuring everyone else now seemed decades older. He didn't argue. He didn't deny a single word. He looked down at the table before speaking. I cannot say she misunderstood us. His voice was barely audible. She understood us perfectly. Another painful silence followed. I spent so much time worrying about appearances that I forgot the difference between status and honor. I have embarrassed my family far more than anyone sitting in this room ever could. His wife reached for his hand. This time, neither of them hid behind another language. Grandma waited until he finished. Then she picked up the silver brooch from the table and carefully fastened it back onto her cardigan, exactly where it had rested at every important moment of our family's life. Only then did she offer her final words. Never assume silence means ignorance. She handed the microphone back to the host, thanked him with quiet courtesy, and returned to her seat. No applause came. None was needed. The truth had spoken loudly enough. As I looked around that silent room, I realized the engagement was no longer the question before us. Now, every person present had to decide what kind of family they truly wanted to become. For several long moments after Grandma sat down, no one seemed to remember why we had gathered in the first place. The engagement banner still hung behind the head table. Champagne glasses remained half full. A violinist in the corner quietly lowered his bow, uncertain whether the celebration had ended or simply changed into something no music could accompany. Then the whispers began. This time, they weren't hidden behind another language. Guests spoke softly to one another, not with gossip, but with disbelief. Several of the patriarch's longtime business associates looked at him with expressions I had never seen before. The admiration that had followed him into the room had quietly disappeared. It wasn't replaced with hatred. It was replaced with disappointment, which somehow felt heavier. My daughter stood perfectly still. She looked at Grandma, then at her fiancé, then back again. I could almost see the battle inside her heart. She still loved the man she had agreed to marry, but love suddenly had to stand beside a truth she couldn't ignore. She wasn't questioning whether he cared about her. She was questioning why he had allowed so much to happen before finding the courage to speak. He answered that question himself. Without waiting for anyone to ask, he turned toward his parents. "I should have stopped this months ago," he said. "Every time you switched languages, I knew there was a chance you weren't saying anything you would say in front of everyone else. I told myself it wasn't my place. I told myself I could keep both sides happy." He shook his head. "All I really did was make good people carry the cost of my silence." No one interrupted him. His mother slowly stood beside him. Tears had already begun slipping down her face. She walked across the room until she stood in front of Grandma. "I cannot undo what I said," she whispered. "I tried to disguise pride as good manners, and I convinced myself I was protecting my family when I was really protecting my own vanity. I am deeply sorry." Grandma reached for her hand, but did not immediately accept the apology with comforting words. Instead, she held it gently. Across the room, all eyes turned toward the patriarch. For a moment, I thought he might leave. His shoulders stiffened, and the familiar pride returned to his face as though he wanted to defend himself one last time. But when he looked around the room, he saw something money could not repair. His reputation had been built over decades, yet in a single evening, people had learned the difference between public respectability and private character. He slowly walked toward our table. "I spent my life teaching my children to achieve success," he said quietly. "Somewhere along the way, I confused success with superiority." He looked directly at Grandma. "My pride blinded me. I judged your family before I ever tried to know it. There is no excuse for that." Grandma nodded with the same calm dignity she had shown all evening. "I believe your apology," she said, "but forgiveness and trust are different journeys." No one spoke. She continued softly, "Forgiveness is something we choose because bitterness only wounds us again. Trust is something we rebuild one honest action at a time. One cannot replace the other." The words settled over everyone present. No dramatic reconciliation followed. No instant embrace erased months of hurt. The engagement remained uncertain, and perhaps it should have. Some wounds deserved time instead of promises. As we left the hotel that night, I realized the real test had only just begun. The months ahead would reveal whether those apologies had been spoken from embarrassment or from genuine change. The wedding did not happen that spring. To the surprise of many friends, it wasn't canceled. It was postponed. Some people assumed the relationship had fallen apart. Others whispered that the families would never recover from such a public confrontation. We let them speculate because none of us felt the need to defend our decision. A marriage was supposed to begin with trust, not urgency. If trust needed time, then time was exactly what we would give it. For the first month, there were no planning meetings, no discussions about flowers or guest lists, and no expensive venues to compare. Instead, my daughter and her fiancé asked both families to meet for dinner at our house. Nothing about the evening was impressive. We ate vegetable soup, roasted chicken, fresh bread, and Grandma's apple pie. The table was too small, the chairs didn't match, and the kitchen became crowded every time someone reached for another serving. It was perfect. Nobody switched languages halfway through a conversation. Nobody whispered behind another person's back. If someone had something to say, they said it where everyone could hear. The second dinner took place at the other family's home. The crystal glasses and polished silver were still there, but something had changed. The father greeted Grandma at the front door himself instead of waiting for the staff. Before anyone sat down, he carried a notebook into the kitchen. "I hope you don't mind," he said with an embarrassed smile. "I'd like to learn your soup recipe." Grandma laughed softly. "It's only soup." "No," he answered. "It's something my family has never had." She understood what he meant. That evening, they stood side by side at the stove. She showed him how to brown the onions slowly instead of rushing them, how much time to add, and why patience mattered more than expensive ingredients. He wrote down every instruction carefully, asking questions the way a student speaks to a trusted teacher. At the following month's dinner, he made the soup himself. It wasn't quite the same. Everyone agreed it needed more seasoning. Grandma smiled and asked for another bowl anyway. Those small evenings became our new tradition. Month after month, someone different shared a story from the years before the rest of us had known them. One month, it was Grandma describing the tiny apartment where she and Grandpa had lived overseas, laughing about how she had once confused two similar words and accidentally invited the neighbors to breakfast instead of borrowing sugar. Another month, the patriarch admitted how frightened he had been as a young man starting his first business, terrified someone would discover he didn't know as much as he pretended. The stories changed the room. It became impossible to reduce someone to first impressions after hearing where they had come from. Nobody's history was ignored anymore. My future son-in-law changed in quieter ways. Whenever conversations became uncomfortable, he no longer searched his parents' faces before speaking. If someone interrupted my daughter, he gently redirected the discussion back to her. If an opinion was dismissed too quickly, he questioned it respectfully but immediately. He stopped trying to keep everyone comfortable and started trying to keep everyone honest. My daughter noticed the difference long before anyone mentioned it. One evening, she squeezed his hand beneath the dinner table and smiled in a way I hadn't seen since before the engagement banquet. It wasn't relief, it was confidence. Respect had replaced performance. Nearly a year after the wedding was postponed, the invitations were sent again. This time, the ceremony was smaller. There were fewer decorations, fewer speeches, and far fewer opportunities for anyone to impress strangers. The focus stayed exactly where it belonged. At the reception, I looked for Grandma's silver brooch. For the first time in my life, it wasn't pinned to her cardigan. Instead, it rested inside a small glass display beside framed photographs. The room became so quiet that I could hear the faint hum of the chandeliers above us. Grandma had just finished speaking in the language my future in-laws had treated like a private shield all evening. Every word smooth, graceful, and unmistakably fluent. No one moved. No one even reached for another sip of wine. Then a crystal glass slipped from someone's trembling hand and shattered across the polished floor. The family patriarch, who had spent the entire dinner leaning close to his wife and murmuring comments he believed none of us could understand, stared down at his folded hands. For the first time that night, he couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Around him, expensive suits and sparkling jewelry suddenly looked strangely small beside Grandma's faded blue cardigan. Without a trace of anger, she removed the old silver brooch she had worn for as long as I could remember and placed it gently on the white tablecloth. The tiny click of metal against porcelain seemed louder than the broken glass. Then she spoke one final sentence. I won't tell you what those words were just yet, because that single sentence didn't merely stop a wedding. It exposed pride, uncovered lies, and forced people to see themselves more honestly than they ever had before. I watched confident smiles disappear, replaced by the unmistakable look of people realizing they had been heard all along. That night taught me something I have never forgotten. Respect should never depend on who you think is listening. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs were there from the very beginning. What seemed like a joyful engagement had already started quietly falling apart weeks before any of us understood why, and none of us, not even me, recognized the truth waiting patiently in Grandma's silence. To understand how everything unraveled, you have to understand the kind of family we were before that dinner ever happened. We never had much money, but we always seemed to have enough room around the table for one more chair. Sunday evenings belonged to homemade soup, fresh bread from the neighborhood bakery, and stories that somehow grew funnier every time they were told. My mother believed every problem sounded smaller after a good meal, and Grandma believed every meal deserved dessert, even if dessert was nothing more than sliced apples sprinkled with cinnamon. After Grandpa passed away, Grandma quietly became the center that held us together. She never asked for recognition. She simply showed up. She watched my daughter while I worked late. She remembered birthdays without writing them down. She somehow knew exactly when someone needed a hug and when they needed to be left alone. Looking back, I realized she carried our family the way old oak trees carry birds, without making a sound about the weight. She almost never talked about her younger years. If someone asked where she had traveled or what life had been like before she married Grandpa, she would smile gently and say, "Oh, that was another lifetime." Then she would steer the conversation toward someone else. Eventually, we all stopped asking. We assumed there wasn't much to tell. Sometimes, though, little mysteries slipped through the cracks. Whenever an old foreign song played on television, Grandma would pause whatever she was doing. A soft smile would cross her face, the kind that belongs to memories too precious to explain. She would listen for a few seconds, almost unconsciously mouthing along with the melody, before quickly changing the channel as if she had caught herself revealing too much. I noticed it more than once, but I never thought to ask why. There was also her silver brooch. It wasn't expensive. Years of polishing had worn away its shine, and the delicate pattern had softened with age, yet she treated it with remarkable care. She wore it only for weddings, anniversaries, baptisms, or any occasion she considered important enough to deserve her best. The rest of the year, it remained tucked safely inside a small wooden box in her bedroom dresser. Then came the evening my daughter rushed through the front door with excitement written all over her face. "He asked me," she said before she had even taken off her coat. "I'm getting married." The room erupted with laughter, tears, hugs, and happy disbelief. Grandma embraced her tightly, whispering a blessing into her ear before holding her at arm's length to admire the engagement ring, sparkling beneath the kitchen light. The young man she had fallen in love with came from a family very different from ours. They lived in a beautiful gated neighborhood, drove luxury cars, vacationed overseas, and hosted elegant dinner parties where every fork seemed to have its own purpose. We joked that we'd need lessons just to keep up with them. My daughter only smiled. "They're wonderful," she insisted. "You're all going to love them." Everyone believed her. Everyone except Grandma. She smiled like the rest of us, but just for a fleeting moment her eyes lingered on that engagement ring instead of my daughter's face. It wasn't fear I saw there, it was recognition. As though she had heard the first quiet note of a song the rest of us couldn't yet hear. At the time, I dismissed it. I wouldn't make that mistake again. A week later, we received an invitation to have dinner at my daughter's future in-laws' home. She was excited enough to call twice that afternoon, reminding us not to worry because everyone was so welcoming. I wanted to believe her. Grandma simply nodded, took the silver brooch from its wooden box, looked at it for a moment, then quietly put it away again. "Not yet," she murmured, almost to herself. Their house looked more like a boutique hotel than a family home. Every hedge had been trimmed into perfect shapes. Every window gleamed. Inside, polished marble reflected the crystal lights overhead, and shelves displayed awards, framed degrees, and photographs from expensive vacations. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel lived in. My daughter's fiancé greeted us warmly before anyone else could. He hugged me without hesitation, shook my hand firmly, and helped Grandma remove her coat. His smile was genuine, and I could see why my daughter loved him. Yet, every few minutes, his eyes drifted toward his parents, as though he were waiting for silent approval before saying the next thing. His father carried himself like a man accustomed to being admired. He spoke about universities, charitable boards, and successful business partnerships with effortless confidence. His wife matched his polished manners perfectly. She complimented our homemade dessert, praised my daughter's kindness, and told Grandma she looked remarkably energetic for her age. Every sentence sounded pleasant. Every smile seemed carefully measured. Then, without warning, they shifted into another language. The conversation flowed quickly around the table. They laughed softly, exchanged glances, and continued eating while my daughter and her fiancé translated only the harmless parts. The rest of us smiled politely, assuming they were discussing ordinary family matters. Grandma was pouring tea when one particular phrase reached her ears. Her hand stopped for the briefest moment. A single drop landed on the saucer. She lifted the teapot again almost immediately, smiled as if nothing had happened, and asked whether anyone wanted lemon. If I hadn't been watching her so closely, I would never have noticed the pause. The conversation returned to English. "I hope you won't mind learning a few of our traditions," the future mother-in-law said pleasantly. "Some customs are simply more refined." She laughed lightly, making it sound like a harmless observation. Later, she complimented my daughter's dress before suggesting different colors might appear more sophisticated at family gatherings. She admired the way we valued togetherness, then wondered aloud whether our neighborhood was still changing. None of the remarks sounded openly rude. Each one carried just enough sweetness to make questioning it seem unreasonable. Across the table, the father leaned toward his wife and spoke again in their language. Neither of them realized Grandma was listening. His tone remained calm. His expression never changed. Whatever he said made his wife nod almost imperceptibly before she answered in the same language. They believed they were invisible behind unfamiliar words. I didn't know then that he had quietly questioned whether people like us truly belonged beside their family name. Grandma simply stirred her tea. She never corrected them. She never reacted. She only watched with the patient expression of someone who had suddenly learned far more than anyone intended to reveal. When we drove home that evening, my daughter kept talking about how well everything had gone. I wanted to agree, because on the surface she wasn't wrong. Still, something inside the room had shifted. What felt like harmless awkwardness that first night would soon reveal itself as something far more deliberate. After that first dinner, I convinced myself I had imagined the uneasy feeling that followed us home. My daughter was happy, her fiancé remained kind, and every new wedding plan seemed to bring another reason to celebrate. I told myself families always needed time to adjust to one another. Different backgrounds could create awkward moments. Surely that was all this was. Grandma never argued, she never complained. She simply listened. The first real crack appeared during a meeting to choose the restaurant for the wedding reception. The manager guided us through sparkling dining rooms while discussing menus and seating arrangements. My daughter's future father-in-law praised every expensive option before switching into his family's language. His wife looked toward Grandma's knitted cardigan and sensible shoes, then quietly answered him. They both smiled. Everyone else continued discussing appetizers. Grandma stood beside a window overlooking the gardens, calmly admiring the flowers. When they returned to English, the mother-in-law cheerfully suggested choosing a table farther from the entrance because first impressions matter. The comment sounded innocent, yet something about the timing felt strange. On the drive home, Grandma never mentioned what had been said. Neither did I. Looking back, I know why. She had already heard them laughing about her clothes, her accent, and how pictures would look more elegant if she stayed out of the front row. They believed their private language protected them from consequences. It did not. A week later, we went wedding dress shopping. My daughter glowed with excitement as she stepped out wearing gown after gown. She laughed like the little girl I remembered twirling through our living room in borrowed curtains, pretending they were princess dresses. Even Grandma wiped away a quiet tear. Across the boutique, however, another conversation unfolded. The future mother-in-law leaned toward her sister and spoke softly in their language. They glanced toward us before smiling behind perfectly polished manners. Their words were hidden, but their expressions were not. The fiancé shifted uneasily. He heard them. I could see it. He lowered his eyes but said nothing. When they finally returned to English, his mother wrapped an arm around my daughter and said, "You look wonderful. You've adapted so beautifully." Adapted. It was such a small word. Only later would I understand how carefully it had been chosen. Grandma folded her hands in her lap and smiled exactly as she always did. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I noticed something unusual. She opened an old notebook with worn brown covers and quietly wrote several lines before placing it back inside a kitchen drawer. "What are you writing?" I asked. "Oh," she replied gently, closing the drawer. "Just little things I don't want to forget." I smiled and thought nothing more of it. The notebook appeared again after every family gathering, always for a minute or two, always in silence. As wedding plans became more elaborate, so did the insults. The engagement planning meeting brought both families together to discuss traditions, music, speeches, and the ceremony itself. My daughter's future father-in-law insisted every custom should reflect their family's standards. Whenever one of our traditions was mentioned, he politely suggested a more sophisticated alternative. Then, believing none of us understood, he began speaking freely again. His wife laughed. His brother joined in. Someone described Grandma as decorative. Another voice called her confused. Someone else joked that she probably no longer remembered which conversation she was listening to. Their confidence grew louder because they believed silence meant ignorance. Grandma calmly poured herself another cup of tea. She thanked my daughter for passing the sugar. She asked whether anyone wanted more biscuits. Not once did her expression change. The stranger, watching from across the room, would have sworn she understood nothing. My daughter sensed the growing discomfort, but blamed cultural differences. "They don't always express themselves the way we do," she whispered to me afterward. "I'm sure nobody means any harm." I wanted to believe her. The fiancé became quieter with each gathering. Whenever his parents slipped into their private language, his shoulders tightened. Sometimes he opened his mouth as though he intended to interrupt them, only to stop before speaking. His silence disappointed me almost as much as their words. Grandma never criticized him. She never criticized anyone. After every meeting, she returned home, removed her shoes, made herself a cup of tea, opened the same worn notebook, and carefully filled another page. The pages slowly multiplied. No one asked what they contained. No one imagined they mattered. Then, just when everyone believed the difficult moments were behind us, the wealthy family announced one final engagement dinner before the wedding. They promised it would bring both families together once and for all. Grandma looked up from her tea and asked a single unexpected question. "Will everyone important be there?" The room fell strangely quiet before anyone answered. The answer came the following Saturday. "Everyone," my daughter told Grandma, "his aunts and uncles, family friends, his father's business partners, half the community probably." Grandma nodded. "Good." That evening, I found her standing before the hallway mirror in the same blue cardigan she had worn to countless birthdays and Sunday dinners. In her hand was the silver brooch. She polished it once with her thumb, pinned it carefully over her heart, and studied her reflection. "You look beautiful," I said. She smiled. "Tonight matters." I thought she meant the engagement. The banquet was held in a private room at one of the finest hotels in the city. White roses covered the tables. Crystal glasses caught the light from chandeliers overhead, and waiters moved between guests carrying trays I was afraid to touch. Everywhere I looked were tailored suits, silk dresses, expensive watches, and people introduced with titles before names. Our family arrived carrying a homemade gift basket Grandma had insisted on bringing. The contrast wasn't lost on me. Publicly, my daughter's future in-laws were gracious. Her future father-in-law welcomed us warmly and told his guests how delighted he was that two families were becoming one. People applauded, photographs were taken, glasses were raised. Then everyone sat down. Within minutes, the other language returned. This time, there was no caution. Perhaps the size of the room made them feel safer. Perhaps months of our silence had convinced them we truly understood nothing. Whatever the reason, they spoke with a confidence I had never heard before. They discussed shortening one of our family traditions because it would look provincial. They suggested moving my side speeches earlier, before the important guests became attentive. Someone proposed seating several of our relatives toward the back during the wedding ceremony. A few people laughed. My daughter's fiancé stared at his plate. Grandma watched each person who spoke. Not angrily, not accusingly, carefully. Once, her fingers touched the silver brooch over her heart. Then, she glanced toward the guests filling the room, as if confirming the answer to the question she had asked days earlier. Everyone important was there. Dessert arrived, followed by champagne. The father stood and tapped his glass with a spoon. Before we finish, he announced, we'll have a few speeches. Chairs shifted. Guests turned toward him. I expected my daughter's fiancé to speak first. Instead, beside me, Grandma placed her napkin neatly on the table and rose. "Excuse me," she said. The room quieted. Then she looked directly at the host. "Before you continue, may I borrow the microphone?" I had never seen his smile disappear so quickly. There was nothing dramatic in her expression. That was what unsettled me. She looked exactly as she did at home before saying, grace, calm, and certain. Across the table, the patriarch leaned back, still unaware that the evening he had designed to display his family's standing was about to become something else entirely. Grandma touched her brooch once more, lifted the microphone, and began.